I also need to check the time to make sure, because I've got a lot more material than I have time to cover, so I want to be sure that I get as much of it in as possible. So, the business elixir. I distill the process into a format you can use, right? You can show them. Have you distilled what you learned from Tony Robbins into a format you can use?
Yeah, not just him, but other.
Others too, right? And you've distilled Alex's stuff into something you can use, right? I demonstrate the format and show you how it works and how to do it, right? I take you through the process. This is exactly how you have a wedding that you'll never ever forget. That'll be beautiful, as beautiful today as it was, as beautiful 100 years from now as it was today. I set you on your own call to adventure. I put you on the path. I show you how you can get started. I take you and physically get you started in this process. Because I want you to remember this, you can take no action external to your mind or your mind until you first taken it in your mind. You have to get people actively involved in believing this. How many people here are NLP practitioners or have a good sense of NLP or hypnotism or anything else? Does NLP work on blind people?
Sure.
Does hypnosis work on blind people? Can you hypnotize a blind person?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. There's a reason for that, right? Because everything that we communicate happens in words first. You can't read a book without converting a word to language in your head before you attach meaning to it. And so, as you think about that, you have to think about when you're telling these stories, if you don't get people to take action first, if you don't get them actively involved in the call to adventure, if you don't get them actively involved in seeing themselves, is that just going on in my head, or is it?
There's what going on in there?
One of these times, talking about cults and God, it's going to happen. So, you have to set them on their own call to adventure. You have to get them actively involved in seeing themselves taking this action. How many people here have ever read a book or heard a story and it seems like you're in it, you're there? How many times have you sat in a movie theater and you're so engrossed in the movie, your blood's pounding and your heart's rushing, and or vice versa, your blood's rushing and your heart's pounding, and you can't stop. You're just so intensely involved, right? That's what that is. You've become a part of the story. And when you do that, when a client does that, when you get a client to do that, when they become so much a part of your story, they can't make any other decision other than the ones that you've led them to now. And they can't not buy from you. And you develop a following of like-minded allies who spread the knowledge. Are there people who are raving fans of yours?
Yeah.
Do you have raving fans, Jason?
Yes.
Of course you do. Everybody does. And those are the allies. Those are the people who are going to spread your message. Those are the people who are going to pick up everything you do, and they're going to defend you. Now, there's a couple of things people will defend. Will people defend a belief that they're wrong about or right about, Harder? Wrong about, right? So those people who believe in you are not going to try and defend what people don't believe in you. They're simply going to find better people to tell your story to who want to become a part of what you're doing. This is how cults grow, by the way. That's the cult model. You just simply invite people who are strong attractors, great socializers, to begin to tell a story. Do you think that they told my mom all the things that I told you about? Got to get rid of your TV, get rid of your pants, stop smoking, stop drinking, you can't do anything else in your life. You have too much education already, so we need to make sure that you stop watching television. And do you think they said all those things to her right up front? Here's a list, sign your name. No, of course not. No, it's very simple. They just said, look, we have another way of thinking about things. Maybe you should check it out. And then they used people who were very interested and friendly, people who were kind and generous, people who were interested in her. And they brought her a little further and a little further along. And then they just simply asked her, why don't you come to Idaho and help us build this place? You could be responsible for helping save thousands of other people. Who doesn't want to do that? So she did. And then guess what happens when you cut off everybody's social support? You cut off their full version of social support, sociological support from the idea that you can't interact with people that are outside of the group, you can't interact with your family, you can't do any of those kinds of things. Who do you have to turn to then? You have to turn to your peers, which happen to be people who are strongly involved in the cult, who tell you what to do and how to think now. In the elixir, you're not telling people what to do and how to think. You're only giving them the opportunity to draw their own best conclusions. That's the essence of persuasion. It's leading someone to their own most logical conclusion. It's not a technique that says, I'm going to puppy dog close you, I'm going to sharp angle close you, I'm going to use this one technique and it's going to do that. Techniques and tactics alone, applied out of context, don't work. They just simply don't work. Imagine right now, as we're fighting a war in Iraq, we decide to go and drop we decide to launch an atomic bomb on Nepal. Would we win the war in Iraq? That's what improperly, out of context, applied tactics do. And yet that's what people do. They'll talk to someone, they'll say, well, I'll just apply this tactic. There's a really good article in Esquire. That Esquire has a new influence column every month in their magazine now. And this one was about a guy who was trying to initiate the law of reciprocation by preemptively tipping his dry cleaner to get him to fold his clothes. Now, what is a primary belief of service-oriented people in our society today about their compensation?
Not enough.
Not enough, and if I do a service for you, you should tip me, right?
Yeah.
So, can you initiate the law of reciprocation by preemptively tipping someone who expects a tip already? No, absolutely not. And he's dumbfounded by this. So then what he ultimately comes to through this trial and error over a period of a month or so is that he says, hey, look, I know your son's getting ready to go to college. Put this in his college savings fund. And does that have a different kind of impact?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? Has a different kind of impact. So he's changed the context, but he's still got the same thing, right? And now, and his whole point was the guy finally said, so you travel a lot, right? What are you doing? Tell me. So the guy started developing a relationship with him. He still didn't fold his clothes. But what do you think might have happened if when the guy was slammed, busy, couldn't get away, if he'd have walked to the deli next door, picked up the guy a sandwich and a Coke, and brought it back and said, look, I see how busy you are, and I travel a ton. It's I know what it's like to be so busy, like, you pull out your clothes and they're not right, and you're just frustrated, right? I can just tell you're going to be starving in a minute, you're going to need a drink, I just went and grabbed this for you, thanks. The next time you come in and say, would you mind just folding my clothes up and putting them in this, I like my clothes folded so I can just stick them right in my suitcase, would you mind just folding them up instead of putting them on a hanger? What do you think is going to happen? It's done. It's a done deal, and you never have to think about it again. And will he tell other people about what you did for him? Wow, this guy brought me a sandwich. Who does that, right? That's what we're talking about. Here's how you find your story. Now, before we find your story, I want to tell somebody's story. Who would like to have me tell your story for you? I did this for one other person. Who did I do that for earlier today? I helped you find your story.
Yes.
Right, yeah. And it wasn't a perfect story, but we took the elements out.
took care of
Does
it.
it follow this fairly well? Okay, great. Who would like me to help you find your story quickly? All right, in the back. Go ahead, come on up. Just go ahead and come up here.
Maybe it's warmer up here.
It is warm up here. It's warm up here because I'm smoking hot. Yeah. Whoa, don't sit there. Just 1 second. Look right.
Interrogation.
Yeah, tell me again. Go ahead and pull that out.
Tell me your story.
One way or the other.
That's right.
The deal was I wasn't to say anything else for the rest of the seminar, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to. You simply need to stare into the bright, bright light. Okay.